We're discussing Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma. Today is chapter 1, in particular the question, why do large companies sometimes succumb to disruptive entrants? We're using Tesla as a case study and asking the question, is Tesla at risk by Chinese disruptive entrants in the electric car market? This is another In Wrong podcast. It's November 6, 2020. I'm Krim Delko. For the day, the fund is down 5%. The market is flat. For the year, we're up 214%, and the market is up 9%. We're outperforming by 205%. So the question that Clayton Christensen starts the book with in chapter 1 is, sometimes successful companies succumb to disruptive technologies. What is going on? And let's first set the landscape, let's set the parameters, and then discuss the case study of Tesla and how we think about Chinese entrants, in particular companies like NIO, but also legacy companies like BYD, which seem to be getting a bid recently in the stock market. NIO currently is about $60 billion market cap. So these are massive companies now. They're larger than some of the legacy automakers in Germany or in the US. So these are, you have to take them seriously. And in particular, we're asking the question, are these companies to Tesla? That is the question. So let's first discuss Clayton Christensen's arguments in chapter 1. Christensen asked the question, there are sometimes in the history of business successful companies and they're not able to fend off new entrants. And he's looking at the disk drive industry and he realizes that sometimes the existing incumbents are able to continue growing and dominating their markets, and sometimes they're not. And the conclusion is that he distinguishes two types of innovations: sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation. Sustaining innovation is innovation that keeps improving performances along the vectors that the existing customers are valuing. So companies, for example, like Seagate in the disk drive business, were continuously improving performance, for example, cost, capacity, performance, speed, things like that, along the same metrics that their existing customers were valuing. And then every now and then in the disk drive business, there were companies that came in with lower, smaller form factors, and they were able to outperform the markets, the incumbents. And the question is, why was that possible? Why did the incumbents let those entrants dominate new markets? And this is the answer already. What happened is that you had, let's say, 8-inch disk drives, and they were very good for desktops. And then the 5-inch disk drive came to the market, and they were good for laptops and portable computers. And the incumbents, they didn't really care about those smaller form factors because they were still processing their products for the existing market, which was desktops. So they didn't care about the new emerging market of laptops. And then the same thing happened with 5-inch when it went from 5-inch to 1.8-inch. What happened there is the 1.8-inch was used for portable heart monitoring devices. So they weren't used for laptop computers anymore. So the conclusion in Clayton Christensen's first chapter is that you have technological innovation, which is sustaining, which means we're increasing performance along a given set of performance parameters which are geared towards an existing client base. And then there are entrants which come up with new innovations, disruptive innovations, and they are different, and more importantly, they cater to different clients. Their clients either are new or they have different performance metrics. For example, the clients that were in the 8-inch disk space, space, they were clients that were making desktop computers, so they needed performance metrics around desktop computers. And then the 5-inch disk space came, and they were for notebooks. So that was a different market with different requirements, and that's the key. That's the fundamental thesis of Clayton Christensen, that you have sometimes new entrants and they succeed because they establish new markets, markets that weren't in demand before they entered. So now let's use that argument and look at the situation today. We have Tesla, which is absolutely in the business of sustaining innovation, which means they're continuously improving the performance metrics of electric cars around existing customers. So the typical Tesla customer is a customer that buys a car in the neighborhood between $40,000 and $100,000, and they care about a couple of things. They care about design, they care about speed, they care about uh, storage capacity of the battery, they care about acceleration. There's a couple of things that the Tesla customer cares about, and Tesla keeps relentlessly improving along those metrics. The question now is, do we have new entrants in the market that are potentially disrupting Tesla? Is NIO a disruptive company in the Clayton Christensen sense that they are catering to a new market that Tesla is currently not caring about? That's the question. Now let's look at NIO a little bit. NIO is a company that overall, I would say, we sometimes jokingly call them the Ministry of Tesla. It's basically a Chinese-based company that is trying to mimic Tesla on almost every front. They have a few slight differences. For example, they have a battery exchange program, and they also have Tesla cafe, NIO cafes where people can go and buy their car and be catered to a little. It's not like a dealership network. It's very different. It's typically on the high street in urban areas, Shanghai, Beijing, and it's fancy with nice looking girls, and then you can drink espresso and buy your car and discuss features about your car and things like that. So overall, I would say Tesla and NIO are very similar, and I don't see at this point a disruptive force within the NIO space. The one thing that NIO has that Tesla doesn't do, NIO is completely horizontal. So they have no vertical integration. And to me, that is the biggest disadvantage of NIO, because at this point in the electric car space, integrated is a massive disadvantage, because your largest competitor, Tesla, is vertically integrated. They're able to innovate across the value chain, build the innovation stack that we so often discuss, and it's very difficult for NIO to keep up with that innovation stack, because they have to coordinate with all the other makers, with all the other suppliers, such as, for example, Continental or Magna or all the suppliers that they're talking, LG Chem, Panasonic, like they are completely not vertically integrated, and to me that is a massive disadvantage, because in order to be at the same price point like Tesla, almost by definition, you have to compromise massively on the quality of the car, or you can have a higher price point like, let's say, Lucid has, or a lot of other competitors have, and then you're just not price competitive. So in order to have price and performance metrics similar to Tesla, you really have to you have to be vertically integrated at this point. So in our view, therefore, we don't see a realistic situation for NIO to be competitive with Tesla at this point. Christensen in the book mentions that the disruptive entrants typically are actually horizontal companies, because the components that are necessary to compete with incumbents are sufficiently commoditized and available and at good quality that you can buy them and put something together and create a new architecture for a new type of market. We don't see that right now with NIO. Another company that we should be careful about is BYD. BYD is coming from the low end, literally selling skateboards with batteries. They've been around for 2 decades at this point, and they've been innovating with battery technology and all kinds of things. So we shouldn't underestimate their expertise and know-how. But so far, BYD has been definitely in the low end. So when we say low end, we say sub $20,000 type markets. And there is definitely a market for that in China. And anybody who's read the first chapter of The Innovator's Dilemma, I'm pretty sure everybody's light bulbs now go off, because this is like, oh, this is dangerous. So we're looking at a toy, at something that nobody's taking seriously, a cheap, bad car, basically a car that you don't want to compare now with a Tesla. But what could happen, according to Clayton Christensen, is that these companies start creeping into your market. Through sustained innovation, they actually can become better. And this is a real risk. And I think this is the big risk that we should be thinking about going forward with Tesla. It's actually not NIO, it's not XPeng and Li, all these companies that have billions of market cap already, because they are doing the same thing like Tesla. And most importantly, they're not creating new markets. But BYD is creating a new market in a sense that they are very, very low end, catering to people with very different performance needs, obviously, and they have the ability through sustained innovation to creep up, meaning they could maybe start attacking Tesla's customers, and maybe through sustained innovation, they could have a price advantage relative to Tesla. So this is a serious threat that could potentially, maybe not now, but in a few years, become a disruptive force. Now, I would say that probably what Tesla announced in the battery day in 10 years from now could be considered the answer to that problem. Because what Tesla announced in the battery day was the $25,000 car. And we believe now that we're thinking about this first chapter of the Innovator's Dilemma, that Tesla actually is envisioning this problem and saying our answer to this risk is that we will become a $25,000, we will have a $25,000 car. So while BYD has the potential to creep up the market to get to that $25,000 price range, Tesla is going to creep down the market. And Tesla is going to not just match the price point, but also is going to be much better in many other performance metrics. And this is the answer. So the answer to the threat of BYD and BYD type companies is to creep down by disruptive, sustained, and disruptive innovation, a combination of both, partly because what we consider disruptive innovation would be the battery architecture that is completely new, that is catering towards new types of use cases, and there's also a lot of sustained innovation. We're not even talking about the AI at this point, the self-drive, the network, other Tesla features. We're just talking about the car right now, and we believe that Tesla has the potential in about 5 years to have a $25,000 compelling, intelligent, smart electric car on the road, which will compete with something like a BYD or a NIO or something like that in that price range. So the battery day was an answer to the threat of disruption within China. And we believe that this is actually more relevant even today, because the fact that Tesla is exporting cars from China makes us believe that Tesla is maybe on purpose not trying to penetrate as fast in the Chinese market in order not to be entangled in the price war with Chinese disruption and Chinese disruptive entrants or incumbents like such as BYD. They want to keep their premium brand where it is and then innovate through sustained and disruptive innovation and then get down to the price point while keeping quality and all the other performance metrics that Tesla cares about high, so that when they have the $25,000 cars, they are dominant. And this is the fundamental thesis of our Tesla investment, which is that Tesla cannot tolerate any kind of market share whatsoever to give up. Tesla needs to dominate this market in order to fulfill their mission. This is a big misconception, that this is one of the things that we believe in that very few people agree with us about, which is Tesla, in order to fulfill their mission, cannot allow other automakers to take a lot of market share. In fact, at best, they can give a little bit just to not look like a dominating monopolist. Tesla needs to dominate this market, have very, very high market shares in every segment that they play. in order to transition successfully from fossil fuels to electric cars. Once this transition is done, once they have, let's say, 30-40% of the market, maybe 50% of the global market annually, and once they start replacing enough cars of the global fleet, let's say 2% of the global fleet per year or something like that, maybe then once almost every customer is convinced that electric cars are the thing to buy, then they can start giving up market share. But right now we're not in that position, and here's why. If Tesla gives up market share now, there is a high risk that the car market ends up in a endless price war where quality and all the other metrics get discounted and only price matters, and then we're back to status quo. We had before. We had a market with undistinguishable cars where everybody was fighting for price, and then we had the German luxury makers, a few Japanese and American car makers, which were able to carve out a niche. This is a risk that could happen again if you have a low-end electric car market where the Chinese disruptors from below come and sort of level out the playing field. And it's a bit like the Android ecosystem where all the phones are basically crap and you don't really care, and then you have only one or two premium makers, and those premium makers could actually, even there's a risk that they could still be ICE makers. So in order to prevent that risk, in order to not give even a chance for the Germans in particular, but also for things like Cadillac and Lexus, Toyota, they don't have a chance to save their brands. Tesla needs to dominate the market a little bit a la Apple, and that's why they cannot give up market share. And in our belief, this is why Tesla is launching a $25,000 market, to make sure that this disruption that Clayton Christensen discusses in the chapter 1 of the Innovator's Dilemma does not happen, that Tesla takes care of that market. And in the words of Clayton Christensen, very often people are scared of cannibalizing their own markets and therefore they give it up to new entrants. Tesla is absolutely not scared of cannibalizing themselves. In fact, there's also this halo effect that if they dominate one segment, then the other segments get a lift. And this is the strategy of Tesla, and we're very comfortable. So to summarize chapter 1, the question, why do large companies sometimes fail to see that new entrants can dominate new markets, is that is not a risk that Tesla has, because Tesla is envisioning that and is preparing themselves for the disruption coming from below, in particular the Chinese entrants, by $1,000 car.